When we talk about our freedom in Christ, we're talking about being released from Satan's bonds, being set free from the sin that once enslaved us. Good morning. This is Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisney, Illinois, with your thoughts for Tuesday. The Apostle Paul reminds Christians in Rome that they have been serving sin and Satan for so long, yet nothing good or profitable has ever come from it. He says in Romans 6, "What fruit did you have then in the things of which you are now ashamed?" We know that fruit is certainly a wonderful outcome that blesses a person's life. So Paul is asking about the sin that has controlled our life before Christ came in. And he tries to remind us of how horrible it was. I mean, as you look back, can you see any positive things from that life of sin that you would call fruit, or some blessings from that way of life? Generally, sin leaves a trail of heartbreak and loss, maybe even destruction in its path. So he reminds these people that the end of those is death and destruction. In Romans 6:22, he says, "But now, having been set free from sin and having become slaves of God, you have your fruit to holiness and the end, everlasting life." Now, some would ask, why would we, being slaves to sin, only change around to become slaves of God, as Paul has alluded to in this verse? Well, we know how Satan treats those who follow him. He corrupts their thinking. He leads them down a path of heartache and despair. He will destroy their health. He will ultimately lead them to follow him right off into hell for eternity. But when Jesus Christ died that awful death on the cross, he paid the price for sin and the cost for redeeming us from Satan and his grip on our lives. You see, it's like God bought us back. We were once his through creation, but now he has paid that price to redeem us back from our sinful nature and the awful path that we were on. Paul mentions several things in Romans 6 about what it is like to surrender our life to God. He says, first of all, we reckon ourselves dead to sin where it is no longer reigning over us. That is actually a standing, right? Where we reckon ourselves dead to sin. Then we present our members as instruments of righteousness to God. We are yielding control of our life to become the servants of the most holy God. Now, that will call for a tremendous change in our life. In Romans chapter 12, it actually calls it a transformation. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. But it also calls for the fruit of holiness, which we will receive through the process of sanctification, where God is making us more like his Son, Jesus Christ. Not only will we see and experience this new fruit of holiness in our daily lives, he also reminds us that in the end, we will receive everlasting life through Jesus Christ. Leaving Satan as our master, we are free to serve God on our way to heaven.